Hello, everyone. This is Megan Keith,
This is Stephen Keith.
and this is the Synchrony Podcast, the inaugural episode, I guess you could
Enter
say.
chime here.
Yeah, we're still figuring out all of the...
Everything.
Oh, yeah, we're figuring it out.
We do not have our act together.
No, it's funny. I was thinking about like all of the podcast sort of like accounts I see on social media that have these beautiful like podcast studios, and they're like this great setup, and I'm like, oh, if they could only see what we're working with.
I actually was thinking about taking a selfie.
I don't know that we should do that. I don't know that we want to have a historical
for
record
people to see, but for us
to see. Yeah, I would like no one to ever see this picture that you're about to take. Cheese. For those of you who don't have the great mental image of what's going on, we are recording this in a shed in our backyard. And the shed is where we have our laundry infrastructure, so to speak. So there's a lot of laundry in here, and we have a clean duvet that we just have not folded up and taken inside in a pile on the table beside us, and
a dog
very
sitting under our desk.
Yeah, a very slapped together podcast setup, but we're here. We're doing it.
We are trying.
We are going into this with the philosophy that perfection is the enemy of good.
Which has dominated our marriage.
Yeah, that's our whole marriage right now.
Like until this year, we've actually started setting relatively realistic expectations out of ourselves.
Yeah, for like what we can get done.
We're like, we're going to get the perfect house clean, and we just always have these unrealistic expectations of ourselves with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, which we will talk about a little bit. But
yep. So anyway, this is going to be the kind of Wild Westy first episode of what we hope to be a really great podcast resource for our apostolic singles. Should we just talk a little bit about what Synchrony is about? And so we realized that our singles in the Apostolic Church have a problem in front of them. They have a challenge, I think, that is maybe a bigger challenge than we realized as a movement. So just for some background, Stephen and I met when I was in undergrad in South Florida, and dated off and on, and we'll explain the off and on part probably in a different episode, but while I was in graduate school, and I studied religious studies and was focusing on looking at the Apostolic Church from an academic perspective. And something that really stuck out to me when I was doing that research, I was researching modesty. So I was talking to a lot of our young people about their experiences with modesty. But something that was sticking out to me a lot was that we were putting this insane pressure on ourselves whenever we went to like youth congress or district conference or general conference to look as attractive and as apostolic as we possibly could, because there was this sense that that had to be the moment where we caught somebody's eye. You know, we might not get another chance to do that. And then we got married. And do you want to tell them about like the experiences we had with singles at the churches that we went to?
Well, in my home church I grew up in, and not long after we got married, we moved to another church, and now we are closer to grandparents, so we naturally relocated to another church. We just see a common trend, and that trend is you have really good people who have really good hearts.
They've done all the right things.
They have pursued God. They have pursued a career. What's kind of a common trend is we see them looking up, and they're in their 30s, late 20s, mid 30s, and
40s, 50s even.
Yeah, exactly. And they realize that the people that they grew up with, went to church with, are all either married or moved away.
Right.
And you know, maybe they don't have access to people in their church that are what they're looking for, or even the churches close to them might not have someone, or there might not be a close church to them.
Right. Yeah, we just started to see like every church has this little island of single people who are single in a time when they didn't expect to be, I
Yeah.
guess. Like, and maybe
Yeah.
it's, everyone's experience is so unique, right? Maybe it's that they're what I call like in a period of extended singleness where they never really dated seriously, or they didn't find someone when they were in that sort of early to mid 20s range, which is sort of what we think of as like the time to get married and settle
Yeah.
down. I'm
The
making air quotes.
prime.
Yeah, making air quotes as I
Yeah.
say this for that stereotype, because that's not true for a lot of people. But, maybe they find themselves in that period of extended singleness, or they return to singleness like unexpectedly.
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks in our church who have suffered.
So that's talking about singles that haven't gotten married, but we're not even talking about the singles that have had other circumstances happen.
Right. Yeah. People who have suffered really immense loss, either through divorce or through death of a spouse, and find themselves sort of dropped back onto singles island again later in life. And they have to kind of reinvent themselves and reimagine what partnership looks like.
Yeah.
And so anyway, this island of singles, what we came to realize as we kind of went around to these different churches and met folks was that there really wasn't a great space for them to find someone.
No, you're right.
And it was really heartbreaking because we could see, that they were hopeful. We have close friends who are in periods of extended singleness. And one of them told me recently, we were talking about this, and she was like, people have stopped asking me about finding someone. They've assumed that I've given up, and I think that comes from a real discomfort among the rest of the church, where we see that singleness and that loneliness, and we don't know how to respond to it, and we don't have the right words, and so we don't reach out. And so the loneliness just compounds on itself, right? Not only are they single when they don't expect to be, when they don't want to be, they're also separated from the people who used to be in the same walk of life that they were, because they might have friends and loved ones that have kind of moved on to family and parenthood. And the church, for better or for worse, and with every good intention, sort of stops seeing them in their loneliness as a wound that needs healing, I think. Yeah. Why, like I thought about this, babe, like we you and I are married. We've been married for 7 years. We haven't really been like singles pastors or anything like that. It's not like we, we're in any official, we weren't like given this in any kind of official capacity. No. Like, where did this burden come from?
I think a big part of it has to do with what our values are as a family. Mm-hmm. Megan and I have a really big burden to be able to minister to people who are tired.
Yeah.
And who have dedicated their lives to ministry, and for better or for worse, put themselves on the back burner. Mm-hmm. And we have this overarching goal that I'm sure you guys will hear about at some point, to have a property where we can house people to just have time to rest and really reconnect with God. But at the end of the day, it really comes back to helping mending people and allowing them to think about themselves and renewing their connection with God.
Yeah.
And I think what happened is you had a couple compounding friends. Mm. We had a couple compounding friends. And also with your background in anthropology and your love for data has kind of just birthed this opportunity.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is the Synchrony Project. And if you're not familiar, this is an initiative that we started in the summer of 2023. And the vision was, let's create a process for apostolic singles to find people that are good partners for them. Yeah. And we're going to spend a lot of time on this podcast talking about what we think a good partnership looks like. And that's coming from scripture and our experiences and, the mentors that we've had who have kind of poured that into our lives. But we want to give people the chance to create values-driven marriages. We want couples to connect with people who are passionate about the same things and want to create the same kind of change in the world, and put them in conversation with each other and give them the chance to build a relationship. Because we think that, like, don't get me wrong, if you're a single person, you can go change the world right now. There's nothing holding you back, and you are not less of a person because you're single. And there are people who are single and want to be and feel fully whole in that singleness, which is amazing. But there are a lot of people who don't feel whole in that space. And so we want to give people the opportunity to connect with someone who aligns with their values and build a relationship that ends in marriage, and in a marriage that will launch them into the calling that God has prepared for them. So we put this project together, and we decided that we were going to basically start a matchmaking service, which I went back and forth about calling it matchmaking, because that seems so like...
Yeah, it was quite the conversations for a couple weeks.
Yeah, it just seems so like, like medieval fair kind of like... It's kind of funny though, because like in your day job, you're a beekeeper, like more on that later, guys. But Steven's a beekeeper, and now I guess I'm a matchmaker. And so apparently we both just decided that modern job descriptions were not for us. And we just taken titles from like the 14th century. But yeah, so we started a service where we are basically gathering data on individual apostolic singles, and we're meeting with them one-on-one. We're diving deep into who they are and what kind of partnership they're looking for. And then we're putting them on dates with people that align with those values.
Yeah.
And it's been wild.
How about you tell me a little bit about how this process works?
Yeah, so if you are an apostolic single who wants to get involved in the project, what you do first is you fill out a survey, and that survey asks for some basic data about you, where you live, what you do. It also is a way that we sort of verify your church involvement a little bit. So it has some doctrinal questions to kind of make sure that, a person is a oneness apostolic believer. It asks some financial questions to understand what your financial landscape looks like a bit. And then it also asks some questions about your relationship status. Have you been married in the past? Have you dated seriously? Have you been engaged before? And also things like, do you have kids or family members that you care for? We tried to just get a sense of all the logistics in the survey that would inform whether or not a person is a feasible match for you, right? Whether or not it would be possible for you to exist in the same time zone and family as someone else. But that's only like one side of it. Like that's not enough for us to, this is like my issue with dating apps. Like I feel like they try to distill people down to a set of like
algorithms.
Yeah. Like multiple choice questions, Yeah. And people aren't like that.
I mean, Megan is underselling her survey. The survey is definitely like a 20 to 25 minute survey and has like almost 50 different fields of like characteristics about a person. So like it's an extensive survey.
I mean, it's thorough, but it's not enough is my point.
No, absolutely.
Like for me to know what someone's core values are. So we take the data from the survey and then we meet with each person one-on-one. And that's mostly been me so far. And I sit down with them for an hour and ask about, the kind of person that they want to become as they're married, and what's really important to them, what they're, what they want to pass on to their children, how they want to exist as a couple in the world, what they want to do in the church. And we frame the questions in such a way that I hope really distills down,
Well, what's cool about from what we've seen so far is sometimes this opens up the opportunity for you to ask people questions that they legitimately haven't thought about for themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a diss. I'm saying that this is really food for thought for people to say, hey, are you sure the qualities that you're looking for in a person is something that is really worth saying are red flags or not?
It's a way for people to really hold their own perspectives and assumptions about dating kind of up to the light. Because I think one of the things that we're finding, and one of the reasons why we were so excited to do this podcast, is that one of the other problems with our dating culture, besides not having a good space to connect, is that we have a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and they're not all healthy. You know, we're bringing a lot of the world's criteria about what makes someone a good dating option, or a good, mate,
Yeah.
for marriage, and letting that weigh into our decision making about who we date and how we date them. So we talk about that. That's been really gratifying. And then after we do that interview, I sit down with all the data and the notes, and I get to figure out who to introduce people to, which is really fun and exciting. So I'll kind of look through the database that we have and look through everyone's files. And if I find two people that seem really closely aligned on their values and on their preferences, I'll suggest a meeting time, and then we host little dates. I used to try to call them something different. I was calling them like Synchrony conversations, but nobody knew what that meant. So now I call them dates.
Yeah. Everyone knows what a date means.
Yeah. And it's
It's a non-commitment date, but it's a more of an introductory date.
Yeah, it's an introduction.
It's not you making a commitment to dating this person. It's just
yeah.
you already know that most of your values align going into this conversation.
Yeah.
And so you can just come to this air quotes date and have a conversation with this person and see if you can just really click with them.
Yeah. And it all happens virtually. You know, we work in over virtual calls, which thankfully post-pandemic everyone's pretty good at.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful.
It's pretty cool though. We already have how many different states worth of people?
Oh gosh, I'd have to go back and check now. I think around 20. Like it's a lot of and a couple of
Canadians.
Yeah, a couple of folks out of the country.
Someone to just message from Australia.
Yeah, that was really cool.
That was super cool.
I know. I would love to build some international connections. And what's also really cool is I'm particularly excited about this. We have a lot of involvement from different apostolic organizations and churches.
Yeah.
So, the doctrine is all the same. We're able to kind of distill down to the most important doctrinal values and make sure that they all line up. But, ALJC, WPF, apostolic assemblies, we've had people from all different apostolic groups and a lot of independent churches join the project, which is amazing because those are people that, if your church doesn't fellowship with churches in that organization, it's really easy to miss someone that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been exciting. And the dates have gone really well. Like I said, they're virtual calls, and we get in there and sort of break the ice for you. So it's not like you just get thrown into a virtual call with a stranger and you have to start the conversation from scratch.
That's anxiety inducing.
Gosh, can you imagine? Like, hey, I like your virtual background. But yeah, so we get in there to start and break the ice and ask some questions and get people talking. And then I leave the call and leave the two people in there for like 45 minutes. And then we come back and wrap it up and we follow up with them the next day. And the goal of the call is not to like fall in love, right?
No, it's not.
So, because that would be a lot to ask.
Well, and honestly, in the culture, it's kind of, they want to say, hey, you have to fall in love with this person on the first date.
Right.
And what we're just trying to say is, hey, do you want to see if you want to get to know this person again?
Yeah, like are you curious?
Are you willing to go on another date again? And there's nothing stopping you guys from switching contact information if you do like each other. But
yeah.
The beauty of this whole service is that we could also keep your information anonymous. We do not give out your information. That has to be your choice. And so if you don't want to talk to that person again, not because you don't think they're a good person, but you just didn't really click with them, you don't have to say yes, and you don't have to let them down either. Megan does that for you.
Yeah, I will go let the other person know if you don't feel like there was the right connect. And so we're hoping that the matchmaking service can really give people a chance to connect with people in a authentic way.
Yep.
Like this person matches up with your values. You can go into the conversation, like you said, knowing that no big skeletons are going to fall out of the closet.
Well, and not very often do you get a chance to like say, hey, this person has been vetted before you talk to them.
Right.
And of course, you don't know who's vetting them. Like you don't know Megan yet, but that's the goal of the podcast, is for you guys to see me and Megan's personality and understand that we're not two wackadoodles, and like we have
at least not about this.
Not
about this, I guess.
Not complete wackadoodles.
For us. But I think it's also like let's put some boundaries around that. Like I'm not checking their credit,
Yeah,
or like,
sure.
We're not emailing pastors all the time. Every once in a while we'll ask for pastors to kind of weigh in. But so it's a chance though for, like, for example, if you're a person who is trying to date again after divorce and you have a kid, I'm going to make sure that you only get introduced to people who are not just willing to step parent, but who are excited about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you to go through the experience of connecting with someone and they're really great, but they're reluctant to bring your child into their life. So we do things like that where we make sure that the most important things to you are covered.
So what's the difference between this matchmaking service you're providing and a dating app?
Yeah, it's a good thing to kind of break down.
We're getting a lot of questions of like, can I see this person's profile, or
right? Can I swipe?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So when you think about a dating app, most of them, and I know that there's differences in how the mechanics of how they work, but most of them start off by gathering data about you, and that data will feed into an algorithm. And depending on the dating app, that might be a really good algorithm that tries really hard to predict what kind of people you're going to be most interested in. Or it could be a pretty basic one that just looks at like your location, right? Like Tinder is basically that, where it's just looking for whoever's in your proximity. But however it's made to work.
Proximity in looks.
No, okay. Yeah. I mean, Tinder, you're feeding it data when you swipe, I guess. But basically the thing that's driving who you see first is an algorithm. And it's a set of mathematical equations about what they think you will like based on the history of what people have liked. And that means that you're going to get a certain number of profiles displayed to you that are going to, try to provide you with a little bit of a window into what that person is like. That profile is going to be based off of what that person says they're like. And it's going to be a very small amount of information. They're probably not going to say on that profile, like, the details of their comfort level with different kinds of step parenting situations.
Yeah. I mean, they're also not going to, it's not going to say, hey, I am not willing to move because I have a good job.
Right.
It's also, saying, you're not going to say, hey, I've had a history of X, Y, and Z things, and I want to make sure that the person I matched with is okay, that is in my past.
Yeah. So there's so many things that people are bringing into their dating relationships that just don't fit cleanly within an algorithm, and they don't fit cleanly within a dating profile. And they're really important to people. Like, that's the thing. If you're on a dating app and you find someone that you're interested in, number one, you're probably picking them based on what they look like in their pictures.
Yeah.
And, not everyone is going to look their best in those pictures. It might not be a great representation of what they look like at all. So you're already making a decision based off of something that might not be factual. But it's also a decision that's based off of stuff that's not as important, right? Like, not that we're going to dive into the importance of looks and physical attraction. So don't worry. We're not suggesting that physical attractiveness isn't important to anyone in dating at all. It definitely is. But that might not be your top priority. That might not be the most important thing. And you might spend days or weeks, or Lord help me, I've talked to people that have spent years in situationships where they're messaging someone back and forth, just trying to get up the courage to ask the question to figure out if that person is a good fit for them. Yeah.
There's people that we've talked to that have dated for over 6-8 months and then found out at that point that person that they were dating didn't want kids.
Right. And such an investment of their time and their heart.
And now you have to weigh the balance of, do I want to sacrifice the last 8 months of being with this person and break it off because they don't want to have kids and I really do? Or do I want to compromise what I really want in life because I want to be with this person?
And risk having a connection or a marriage that's bitter and full of resentment. I mean...
Yeah. Can I go a little bit on a tangent?
Yeah, please.
So I think this is one of the coolest aspects about this matchmaking service is the amount of time you save, the amount of efficiency this is. Like I like to be efficient when I come to like organization.
Yes, you are a process guy.
Yeah, and I don't like doing something if I have to walk back and forth several times. I want to have it all right there, right in front of me, and organized very well. That being said, when Megan and I were building out the process of this matchmaking service, I started getting so excited for the singles that were going to be coming into this, because what you're doing is you're taking Megan's services or our services, and she is figuring out all of the hard questions, or 90% of the hard questions that it takes a dating relationship 6-8 months to really dive into all of those questions, if you have the emotional vocabulary to ask these questions. Right. And so you're saying, hey, what is the most important thing for me? Well, whatever the thing is, Megan is taking all these really important questions that would take you dozens and dozens of dates, thousands of dollars in money, and the most important currency, time. It would take you 6 to 8 months probably to figure all this out about this person, to even find out that they might not be a match for you. And when we match people, we are not just matching people who like to go kayaking.
Right.
Or they just happen to both be bowlers, or whatever it may be. We're trying to match people that have true core values that are aligned, or ministerial alignment as well. Yeah. And so when you talk to this person for the first time, going into that conversation, you are able to be compatible with this person. So all you have to do in this date, air quotes date, is figure out, do I like this person? Can I get to know this person better? Yeah.
But the takeaway, I think, is that it is really cool to think about the fact that you could go into a conversation knowing that, like, something that comes up a lot with singles is that they feel this pressure to settle. And I'm using air quotes around settle, right? And I think that by that they mean to decide to be with someone who doesn't fit the vision they had for their life. If you know going into your first Synchrony date that the person on the other side of the call is going to be in alignment with the ministry that you feel called to, and the kind of parenting that you want to do, and the daily habits and activities that are really important to you, like, that gives you a lot of freedom. Yeah. To just make connection wherever it kind of arises.
Yeah. That being said, this is more complicated than the average dating services.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you're coming to this expecting just to try to find someone just based off looks, this isn't the service for you. We keep on going to looks because that's what a lot of the apps these days are. They're geared towards is, am I physically attracted to this person? Yes or no? And then you go forward from there. And we're trying to get to the core of what can help really healthy marriages.
Yeah. Alignment over attraction any day.
Any day.
Alignment first. Do you want to talk about how it's going?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So if you've been following the project on social media, this will not be news to you. The one thing to point out first is that we started off with many, many more women than we had men in the project. And I think there's a lot of interesting reasons why that's the case that we'll go into in future episodes. I don't think it's just about like, oh, there's more women than men in Pentecost. Like, I don't think that's what's happening. But we had more women than men to start. And so it was slow for us to start actually being able to put together matches. Like, I don't think we really started doing that until I think we started in July. I feel like it was like October.
Started in August, I thought.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't get like a match until like October, September. I'd have to go back and look. Yeah. So it took us a little bit to actually being able to start putting people in conversation with each other. Yeah. But it's been really rewarding to see since then. Like, we've had one couple that I would say is like dating. Yeah. Since last fall. No pressure, guys. Hope it's going well if you're listening. And And then a couple of others that have talked for a little bit afterwards and either decided it wasn't for them and came back into the project, or kind of took some time to reevaluate their dating process. I had one person reach out to me. This is like my favorite story so far. I worked with her. We met. She went on a date, maybe two, synchrony conversations with someone. And I reached out to her again about a match because there was someone else that I thought was a really good fit. And she messaged me back and said, I'm actually seeing someone. And I'm going to paraphrase her much more eloquent email, but someone who she wouldn't have considered a relationship with before. But because he's not a great fit for some of the things she had on her checklist, right, in terms of looks or ethnicity or financial background. But she realized after going through the Synchrony process that he's a fit for her values and that he aligns with the ministry that she wants. I hope I don't cry talking about this. I'm probably going to cry a little bit. That is just like such a success story.
Yeah. And like, we're not even like, here's the thing. Our goal is, of course, to get people matched, but at the core of it, our goal is to talk about the dating scene and how it needs to be worked on.
Transform our dating culture.
It really needs to be transformed. And just the fact that she was able to break down her values and say, hey, this is what really matters. Right? That's why it hits us so hard.
Yeah.
Is because that's what we're really going for. And sure, don't get me wrong. We want to see y'all get married. We want to go to y'all's marriages.
Yeah, we want to be at the wedding.
We want to be at the weddings.
Thank you.
But
I'm available to be anyone's matron of honor. Just kidding. I hate wearing heels. Don't make me do that.
But at the end of the day, we just really want people to help give people the language to have this communication.
Yeah. Because really, at the end of the day, this is about teaching people to reflect on what's important to them and identify those qualities in someone else.
Yeah.
And for the whole process to be informed by Scripture. You know, I think something else we're going to spend a lot of time talking about is the fact that, we didn't really, at least in my church, I didn't grow up with a version of what godly dating looked like and what godly mate selection, so the selection of a spouse, needed to involve. And thank the Lord I found you, and we kind of like
thank the Lord you found me.
like we kind of figured it out. I mean, honestly, like the thing about it is though, and we'll talk about our story, like we almost missed each other.
Literally like a week and a half, 2 weeks, we would have missed each other.
Yeah. And so looking back, we're like, man, by the skin of our teeth, like,
thank the Lord for my pastor's guidance too.
Yeah. Pastor Kyle, and shout out to Pastor Kyle in West Palm, who was basically like, get your act together and ask her out. But yeah, so we want to give people a different experience. We want them to have a better opportunity to connect with someone who really aligns with their values. So I think we should probably try to wrap it up here because this is getting sort of long. But like, what do you hope people take from the podcast that we're going to be putting out? Like, what's your vision for what we're going to be offering people?
My honest hope is that people just get some information that causes them to think deeply about themselves. Mm-hmm. That's really it. I would love for them to learn and to start developing more of a vocabulary about what they value. Yeah. And I think that's been the beauty of our marriage, and that this is why I think we're so passionate about this, is from the very beginning, we had a couple things happen in our early marriage that caused us to think very deeply about what's important. And we'll go into that later, of course. But, and we have seen the impact it's had on our marriage in a positive way. So that way, when we go through hard times, at the end of the day, we have no problem with each other. We really just work together to resolve issues because of our ability to talk to each other and have the same values and the same goals and missions. And so really, we just want to take that and say, hey, we want to provide that, have other people have the opportunity to have that.
Yeah, I can't I mean, sometimes I get overwhelmed by how grateful I am for our early experience in marriage and
Yeah.
what it taught us. And how grateful I am for you. And just like, I mean, even throughout this project, how excited and gung-ho you've been. But from the get-go, I felt like we were able to have conversations that not many other couples were able to have because you had gone through experiences that had given you that vocabulary. And so I feel like I'm with someone who is uniquely equipped to do this work. Like, I can't imagine someone else stepping into this because you know how to have the conversations. And you are one of the reasons why I think it was so easy for us to fall into that process of aligning on our values early. So I'm excited to share. I'm excited to talk about you a lot.
Gross.
Just put you on the spot.
Well, thank you, babe.
You're blushing. Yeah. No, I think it'll be good. And I'm excited for
it's
people.
also hot in here because we turn off our AC so you guys don't have to listen to it the whole time.
Yeah, it's getting balmy. It's going to be hard in the summer. We'll have to like take breaks
We'll
every
have to
10
figure out
minutes.
something.
Just put our feet in buckets of ice as we podcast.
We're doing this for you guys.
Yeah. But no, I think it's going to be awesome. I'm hoping that people will, I'm hoping that this is just another way we can add value and start to shape the conversation around what a healthy apostolic dating culture looks like. And we're not the only voices out there. I mean, there are other
Absolutely
folks that are in that work, and we're so grateful for them. I just feel like this is a need that people are starting to see really as a main goal of what we should be doing as in thinking about our singles. And I'm really excited to be involved with it.
I am too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening. We are going to let you go.
Hey, I think we should. So there's a tradition I want to start.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for doing this with me.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right.
Next time, guys.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.